All right, we are at 5:30, so I will call to order City Council meeting for tonight, Wednesday, April 8th, 2020. And it looks like, let me double check. I think we've got all members of the City Council here. We can go ahead and we can start the video for the City Council. Beautiful. All right, a little bit different format for the work sessions, but we'll go ahead and get started. First item we have up tonight is our work session. Let me see if I can get that to advance. There we go. And before we start the work session, we do need a motion to allow folks to participate. Right now, current city ordinance only allows council members to participate electronically. We need to open that up. Is there a motion to do so? Councilmember Green.
Oh, I just had to make sure I wasn't on mute. I'll make the motion to approve electronic participation in this meeting by the mayor, staff, and those listed on the agenda, and anyone called upon by the council chair for both the work session and the regular meeting.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Green, second by Councilmember Whitelock. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, well, we are going to have our first work session item tonight be about, surprise, surprise, budget from Denise Steck, Finance Director. So, Denise.
Sir.
I will stop sharing my screen so you can share yours.
Good deal. Everyone see that one?
Budget workshop. Yep.
Okay, so tonight we're gonna go a little different direction. I think you've heard enough about the general fund for now, and you'll hear more at the next work session. But for tonight, I'd like to discuss the solid waste utility, which is our garbage fund. So the first slide that I have is fund balance. So it's the ending fund balance for the last 3 actual years, and then what I estimate we're going to end this year, and then what I'm attempting to do with the budget for next year. We're going to have several questions at the end for you to provide me with some feedback on some of the things that I've done in the budget, and then we'll go from there. So this is a slide that tells you revenues to expense. So you can see the blue lines or the blue bars are all of our revenues, and the green bars are expenses. You can see for the last few years, we've been just, the revenues are falling below the expenses. And that has a lot to do with some things that we're going to narrate here in just a moment. Particularly that when the rate analysis was done for the last increase, I believe that they didn't really remember to put the public works building lease into the rate analysis. So if they had done the rate analysis and assumed the building lease was going to be active in 2019, we would have just come in right at revenues to expense. So this next slide is a summary of revenues to expense by category. So you can kind of see how those have changed over time and how they will be changing in the budget that we're going to present to you coming up here at the beginning of May. So you can see revenues in 18 were about $4.1 million, and there was some substantial interest in there because interest rates were really strong in 2018, and the fund balance was okay. It was about $1 million. And then the expenses for that year were about $4.3 million. You can see that I categorized them into personnel, which tended to be 2 maintenance workers that repaired and responded to requests from customers for service. Operations, our collection services, which is our contract with Ace Disposal, our dumpster program. And interestingly, what I'm finding is that all of the expense of the dumpster program isn't being put into that account. So I'm going to need to work on with my staff on that. But so that's a little bit a misnomer between those two. And then the landfill cost, which was Transjordan landfill's tipping fees. Capitals and leases, you can see that in 2018, it moved from 35,000, which was just the amount for fleet replacement costs for the vehicles that maintained our garbage stuff. And in 2019, when the Public Works building construction completed, we needed to allocate the costs to the utility funds as well as to the general fund. 7% of the Public Works building is allocated to the solid waste fund for the storage of extra garbage containers, the staff, the administration of the garbage dumpster rental program or dumpster program, and other things. So that's a small percentage, but it does make up a lot of money. So it's about $160,000. And then administration is a small percentage of overhead for council, mayor, finance, those kinds of things that are performed for the solid waste fund. So you can kind of see, if you were running this as a business, it wouldn't be the best business to be in right now. Not right now, for the last 3 years. You'd have gone in the hole, $200,000, $150,000, $140,000. You can see why government runs the garbage programs for cities, right? The budget next year is balanced, and it will come in revenues over expense of about $17,000. So I did as minimal a rate increase as I could and still make us balanced. So what are those changes that are going to happen in this 2021 budget that the mayor is going to propose to you? The first task that I was given was to make sure that we weren't subsidizing any of the utility funds with the general fund. It happens a lot because Public Works really works as a really united team. And so often streets personnel will go out and help with solid waste, or they'll help with sewer or water. And we do want that cross-functionalization. It's important for us to be maintaining our operations that way, and it's most effective. However, when the workload tends to be the majority of that person's job is under one utility, that's when we would consider it subsidized. So we had a crew supervisor that's really been managing the maintenance workers over the solid waste program and assisting them in their program as well, especially as we've had to start disconnecting accounts based on just garbage service. This is the crew that also does that service for us. And so we've added that crew supervisor. It's not a new position. It is moving from the streets crews into the solid waste utility because the majority of the time that is what that employee does. In addition, we added a part-time seasonal because we find that running this program during the summer when we are seeing a lot of green waste and a lot of the cans on fire because people throw fireworks in it and replacements and that kind of thing gets hectic. So we do have a part-time seasonal in there as well. So that's the personnel change. Our collection services, ACE Disposal, in their contract has an inflationary factor. Unfortunately, their inflationary factor is tied to the March report of the Wasatch Front, or the Western Region's U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, which will show numbers from January when the economy was still strong. So it's likely because of that report, they're going to have a 2.5% inflationary increase on their contract. And then again, they will reassess March to March on the next contract, but that's in our contract. So I'm estimating 2.5. That's what I'm seeing in the report that I believe I've pulled, but we'll see what they pull as an inflationary factor. The dumpster program. So the dumpster program is how West Jordan provides a bulk waste pickup for its residents. But we have seen a tremendous increase in the use of the dumpster program, as well as a cost increase to the dumpster program. We're going to go over that in depth because I have some questions about that and whether we want to continue to subsidize that program at the level that we currently do. But we'll have some good discussion about that here in a few moments. The landfill cost. So Transjordan Landfill is also increasing their tipping fees by 12.5%. They're going from $16 a ton to $18 a ton. So I increased the landfill budget by that amount based on our usage over the last 12 months. And then this is another one. Risk management pays for the liability premiums, property premiums, claims, everything that happens with risk, right? And in the past, the general fund has paid for all but $50,000 of all risk. So every property premium, every liability insurance premium, everything, no matter if it was a utility property or like water tanks or vehicles that were servicing the solid waste fund. This year, again, in an effort to remove the subsidization of the general fund to the utilities, I did a study on the risk allocation, and I found that there are several pieces of equipment that are owned by the solid waste fund and have insurance on them. And there's also claims that we pay on the solid waste fund. And so that brought over a risk allocation to the solid waste fund where it's never had one before. And then finally, as we discussed with you, I don't even know, last week or week before, I think it was week before last, and talked about several ways that maybe we could bring some additional revenues into the general fund, especially from properties which may not be participating in the property tax. We talked about a utility tax that would be similar to what you pay on your energy bill. So when you pay Rocky Mountain Power for power, there's a 6% tax on it that goes back to the cities to subsidize them for the right of ways and easements in the city's general fund property for that utility. Our utilities do the same things. Our garbage trucks, or ACE's garbage trucks, do a lot of damage to our roads. This would be a way for the solid waste fund to bring back into the general fund to subsidize for the use of those streets and the deterioration of those streets. So we'll be proposing a 5% utility tax for that purpose. This is a rate history over the last 7 years or 8 years for the solid waste. So you can see in 2013, it was $12.23 for green waste, recycling, and a garbage can. Stayed the same until 2016. And I don't really know what date that rate was set, but it was sometime in 2013. 2016, you raised the rate a little bit to $12.83. That was a 5% rate increase. And then in 2019, that rate got increased again to $16.04, which was a 25% rate increase. With this new budget and the unsubsidization of the general fund, we'll need to increase the rate by 15%, up to $18.25 for the basic services. And then additional cans would also be increased by that 15%. And I'll show you here what that will look like in a moment. This is what it looks like. So on the left-hand side is what the rates would look like through September 30th of 2020. I chose a date that was consistent with the rates that will change in the water rate and in the stormwater system. We could move that to July 1st, but that would be up to the council's discretion. On the left is how the rates currently look. And then on the right side is what they would look like with this increase. And then on the furthest column, it's how much that increase would look like on their bill per month. So if they increased their basic service, they'd have a $2.21 rate increase for their garbage. The dumpster program. So I want to show you the subsidization of the dumpster program and how much it's really costing the city. So I went back today and looked at March 2019 through February of 2020. The amount that we pay ACE to pick up and deliver the dumpsters during that 12-month period was $540,000. The tipping fees that we pay to Transjordan landfill is about $80,000. And then we have one employee that is dedicated all day, every day to the reservations and the management of the dumpster program. And that's that person's salary and benefits. So the total program cost for this is about $700,000. Over those 12 months, we distributed 4,478 dumpsters. And the cost for that program is $154 for every time someone gets a dumpster. Now, I'm going to show you on the next slide what it looks like in other cities, but you could choose to adopt a cost recovery only fee, which would be about $155 per dumpster, or you could increase that a bit and recover more administrative cost for an overhead. for this dumpster program. And if you were to do that, instead of renting the dumpsters, if I took this cost out of the budget and replaced it with revenue to cost so that it's a zero net effect, we could reduce that fee increase from 15% to just 3%.
Denise, I have a question on that, if I could.
Of course, please.
This assumes that we would get 400 or 4,478 reservations for dumpsters if we were charging $154 each.
No, it actually assumes that I don't have to budget any cost for dumpsters. Does that make sense? So right now the budget says I have to budget $700,000 for dumpsters and no revenue.
Okay. Gotcha.
Even if I rented half of those or even a third of those, it would still be revenue to expense and it would be net neutral instead of a $700,000 increase.
Okay, because we could probably assume that far fewer people would
yeah.
utilize the program if they had to pay $154. Like you probably would have no program.
It would probably be half. That's about what we're seeing in most of the other cities where I've been. Is it's still a pretty rigorous program. People still rent it, and here's why.
So Denise, this is Kelvin. I've got another question.
Sure.
Somebody out there needs to mute their microphone, by the way. I'm looking at your slide and I get trying to go to revenue neutral, but if we only charged $155 a dumpster, we wouldn't be revenue neutral because we would still end up paying for the cost of the reservation person, correct?
No, the 155 includes the cost of the reservation person.
Okay, but that assumes the 155. I'm going back to Council Member Jacobs' question. That assumes that there's going to be a substantial number of dumpsters. If we don't have those, then we're not going to be able to cover the cost of that salary, correct? I mean,
correct.
if we only rented out 40 dumpsters, we're at $6,000 as opposed to 4,000 dumpsters that would generate $700,000. So, yeah, there may be a trade-off in there somehow.
Right, which is why you'll see in this next slide, the majority of cities are charging $200. Their cost is going to be very similar to our cost that I just did, right? It's going to be about 155. They put that inflator on it just to make sure that they can cover that staff person as the dumpster program goes up and down. So this is the dumpster program for a lot of the cities that I was easily able to get numbers from. So Draper charges $150 for the 2-day period. Midvale is $200. Murray's $200. Riverton's $200, but they only run their program April through October. They won't do it outside of that period. Now Sandy does $140 and they limit their rentals to 2 times a year. And it's in conjunction with a bulk waste pickup. So Sandy and Salt Lake City do that huge bulk waste pickup where you can throw anything you want out on the curb and they come with big dumpsters and dump trucks and pick it up. I loved that when I was in Sandy, but it is a premium service and it's one that only a couple of cities provide anymore because it's very expensive. You also have people come into the neighborhoods and use those dumpsters or those bulk waste pickups by just dropping their stuff on your front porch. So West Jordan, we have no charge for our dumpsters and we limit them to 6 times a year. We allow a resident to call in on January 1st and reserve every 60 days dumpsters. And that's what happens. So we're subsidizing one person 6 times a year at $150. That's a lot. West Valley also has no charge, but they do it a little different. They only allow it to be a neighborhood cleanup. They allow it once a year per neighborhood and 10 dumpsters go get dumped in that neighborhood for a week. And then, but that group, like an HOA or a neighborhood watch program or something, is responsible for advertising that program. So if they don't show the city that they advertise the program in some way so that everyone uses it, then they aren't eligible to participate again. Now, we had somebody call on private rental. There's a company that does do dumpster rentals privately. It's $367 to rent a dumpster for 2 days, and it includes up to 3 tons of waste. And if it's more than 3 tons, they add another $50 for every ton over those 3 tons. So you can see why governments provide it. It's a great service, but most don't subsidize it like we're doing. So I have some questions for you after you've seen this. Do you have any questions for me before we go through some feedback from you?
I do.
Okay, ask me.
So help me understand this. I always thought that with our monthly garbage fee that we pay,
Yes.
that this covers the cost of all of these dumpsters. So is that wrong?
No, that's true.
Are the dumpsters up and above? So my question is, if we take away this free garbage dumpster program, does that mean the cost for each person's monthly garbage cost will go down as well?
Yes. So right now I have to do a 15% rate increase to continue to subsidize this program and get a balanced budget. If I take this dumpster program and say, if you use the program, you pay for the program, then I can bring down that rate increase from 15% to 3%. So yes, in essence, it will reduce the cost to every resident.
So Denise, David Pack here, just to double check then, I mean, could you liken this unto a scenario of, let's say you have a golf course membership and you're paying for the membership, but then you have a greens fees usage every time you go golf. So those that use it pay more, but yet it's the payment is still subsidized by everyone that's a member, which in this case would be the citizens of West Jordan. Is that basically the way to assess that? Is that there's still a defrayal, so it's not so egregious of an expense that no one would use it, but it's still cheaper than hiring a private company to haul your stuff away.
Right.
But if you're using it, you're still paying more for it.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Denise,
Yes.
did you run any scenarios where it's more of a blended that?
I did, and we'll go through those in your questions here in just a second.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so the first question that I have for you is, are you supportive of removing all subsidization of staff from the general fund to the utilities? I can't see everybody's thumbs right now. So,
See you. Nice to meet you.
Interesting. So does someone, Councilman Whitelock, yes or no?
I think yes, because it makes sense.
Okay.
I think yes.
Councilman Pack?
Thank you for asking. So just to make sure that I'm understanding the same nuance that the question's being asked, removing all subsidization of staff from the general fund to utilities, meaning taking the cost that the general fund would be paying that staff member that's not covered by the fee per use by the people using the dumpsters.
It's not just the dumpsters, it's overall the garbage program in general. So in essence, we have a supervisor that is being paid for in the general fund that is supervising this program. But we are recommending that we move that supervisor to where he's really serving, so that that cost is actually being borne by the utility he's actually serving.
Thank you. And that was my clarification, is that we're not doing away with a staff member. We're just saying we're moving fees, the way that the fees are allocated, which I would be in favor of a fee per use, since we're striving to get to a balanced,
right,
that balanced budget here.
Okay, Councilmember Lamb.
I'm all for looking at the garbage costs for the dumpsters, but I don't want to move any employee funds from the general fund to utilities. I just want to keep utilities as low as possible. We've already had issues with utility rates and costs over the past year, and anything I could do to keep those utility costs down is fine for me, and I'd rather keep those dollars for the employees in the general fund.
Councilman Jacob.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on this as well, for the same reasons that Chad just mentioned. It's probably the right thing to do for the long term, but it's going to cause a short term ouch on utility fees. So
Okay.
I would like to, just like I am with most of these things that cause the short term ouches, I'd like to see it phased and maybe do that over a couple of years, but move in that direction. But
Okay.
phase it in, 33% each year for 3 years or something.
Okay, so you're kind of a middle of the road. Councilman McConaughey.
I'd prefer that the utility funds stand separate and independent. It's always problematic when you've got the general fund money, but some of it's earmarked to support these other funds that by definition should be standing on their own. So I would rather see that all of garbage. So also from an accounting perspective, I think it would be easier to know the true cost of what it actually is, because right now when we look at the budget numbers, does that yeah, I don't want to have to mess with allocations to try and figure out on paper what it is versus what the actual dollar fund is or dollar amount is. I'd rather see this stand on its own. So yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Worthen.
I agree with Chair McConaughey. I mean,
Thanks.
with the accounting and also just keeping them separate makes more sense.
Thank you. And Councilmember Green.
Hold on. All right, had to unclick my mic. I think that I'm leaning towards the same thing of keeping the utility fund fee-based, self-sufficient, and unsubsidized. I think it makes it cleaner for, as was mentioned, with accounting purposes. Yeah, I think it allows us to see the true costs of the program. And so we know where we're going. So I would say overall, I would rather not have any subsidization from the general fund.
Thank you. Okay. So the next question really quick is, do you want to adopt a dumpster rental fee for cost recovery? And what amount of cost recovery do you support? So Councilmember Whitelock, this is really where your question came in. If you were to subsidize none of it, there's a 15% rate increase. And that's not just for the dumpster program, that's for all the changes in the general or in the solid waste fund in general. But if we were to take out that $700,000, or if we leave that $700,000 subsidization in, then I need a 15% rate increase. If you were to say, I think that we want people to participate at 50-50. The city will subsidize 50% and whoever wants the dumpster will pay 50%. If that's the case, I believe that there's a 9% rate increase because I would need to put about half of that into the budget. And then if you want to do cost recovery at 100%, which is $155 per dumpster, and then it's like net neutral, it's like I took taken out of the budget, then it's a 3% rate increase.
Just real quick for the council, we've only got a little under a minute for responses on this one.
So Councilmember Whitelock, what's your thoughts?
I want something different. I don't think any one person needs a dumpster 6 times a year that collectively we're all paying for it. So I think maybe we need to look at mixing up the way the program works, maybe something more like that, because I too struggle with that. Our utilities, we've already raised them a lot lately. So for me, I want something different. I think we need to have a little more conversation, because I think we need to decide how many times a person can have a dumpster, what the program really looks like. I want to keep the program in some form, and I'm okay with a small amount that they're paying, but if I'm not okay with them paying $75 for a dumpster plus something else. I need something else.
Okay, no, that's good.
Do we know, are people using this 6 times a year, or do we have any way to show that?
Absolutely.
Because what I'm thinking is if we cut it down to once a year, is that going to cut costs?
Yeah, for sure. It would, but it's still free. So what you would do is if you wanted it 6 times a year, you get your friend next door to call and get theirs, and then you get your friend next door to call and get theirs. So I'm not sure that we could really control that, but we could say, you know, it's one time a year per resident free, and then the rest, if you want to rent it again, you have to pay 100% or something to that effect.
I like that plan.
I could support that. Or even if we did it by neighborhood, something. I think we need to look at something.
Okay, so we don't have really a lot of time to discuss this one, but I want to just give you a couple more questions that I'm going to ask that I don't really need feedback on right now. But this one is the utility transfer fee. That's already in the budget, and we can talk more about this as we go through the budget process. So we'll need to talk about what that looks like, and then the rate increase. So I'm sorry that this went so fast. 30 minutes goes quickly, but when we have more budget time or more time to discuss some of these things, I think these are answers that we really need to discuss. And absolutely, we can look at the program as a whole. So thank you. I apologize for the brevity of the program, but hopefully it gave you a look as what's going on with this utility.
So I'll send you an email. There'll be a couple of specific data things that I think we're all going to want, but I know there's a couple I will. So I'll send you an email.
And then we can have further conversation the subsequent meeting as well too. I think there's still a fair amount to talk about on that one. Okay, thank you, Denise. Next up, we have our Jones Ranch presentation, and that is Brian Prince with Ivory Development. Give me just a second here as I try and get you moved over to panelist. Give me just a second, Brian. There you are. It'll flash for just 5 seconds or so while we move you over. All right. Let's see. Nope, it doesn't look like it pulled him over. Let me try that once more.
I was going to say the suspense is killing me.
All right, Brian, you should be now in as a panelist. You'll just need to unmute yourself. And then do we need to, I see Chris as well. Does he need to be made a panelist as well, or just you?
No, I think I'll just take it tonight. Evening, council. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to give a quick overview of Jones Ranch and then open up to answer any questions. I'm going to try to share the PowerPoint. Chris, it's saying you cannot.
Yep. Sorry, I was juggling with the participant screen, so you should now be able to share.
Okay. Let me try this.
And I'm also going to move Chris Gambroulis over as a panelist too, just in case he has any commentary.
Thank you.
Jack, are you eating in front of us?
Who?
Hey, at least I'm on mute.
Okay, Jones Ranch. So many of you know a little bit about this. Jones Ranch is a 592 acre master plan. The general boundaries start at about 8,400 south and run to 90th south. The eastern boundary is 6,400 west, and it runs all the way up the hill to the far west boundary of the city. Our proposal consists of 6 primary land uses, 4 residential, some commercial use, and then open space. And we feel like it's a very balanced approach with the land uses spread throughout. We also anticipate institutional uses like schools and churches. For example, we've talked at length with Jordan School District and the LDS Church about a future elementary site and chapel sites. So that is in the plans. As far as the residential uses, if you see her on the far left side, that dark yellow is the very low, which will consist of 1/2 acre to acre plus lots. The light yellow is quarter acre to half acre single family lots. The blue medium density will be all single family 6,000 to 10,000 square foot lots, similar to Ivory's Hyde Point that we built just here to the north. And the light purple is the high density, which will consist of single family cottage lots and townhomes. There are no apartments proposed in Jones Ranch. And then lastly, we do envision some commercial use, and the sixth is the open space. I'm going to show you quickly some just visual examples of what these land uses would mean. The benefit to Ivory developing and building is this isn't theoretical, right? It's we're the builder, so we can show you the exact product we envision in these areas. The very low would be a high-end custom product on large lots. The low density would be similar in product, but those quarter to half acre lots. Medium density is again a medium size lot with similar single family product. High density is envisioned to be cottage, small cottage lots and townhomes. The development plan land use by acreage, as you can see here, the large majority, 72%, is proposed to be the very low to medium density, along with that 20, and the 20% open space. The remainder would be that higher density of 26%, and then 2% commercial. This is a proposed plan, and we're working to try to find the appropriate amount of commercial, to the extent that we've hired Zions Public Finance to complete a market study to help us and council and staff identify the appropriate and sustainable amount of commercial here. So that's something we want to continue to discuss. This next slide is the proposed open space. This shows you the required 20%. That 20% consists of about 41 acres of programmed, groomed park space, along with 77 acres of natural open space. The keynote element in this open space plan is, I don't know if you can see my cursor, my mouse, is this linear Barney's Creek Natural Park that is just under 2 miles in length, and ranges anywhere from 200 to 500 feet wide. That is substantially larger than what you see as you move east into Three Forks and other developments. To help you give a sense of the scale of this linear park, we had a firm create these 3D scaled renderings. So this is a view looking in that Barney's Creek Park, looking northwest up the hill. You can see the homes envisioned backing onto the park, and then that trail. And then this rendering is looking east towards the Wasatch Front. I think it gives a great perspective of scale, not only that, but as well as the high elevation of this property relative to the East Bench. And I think this is just going to be an incredible regional scale amenity for the city. Trails are a major element of the development plan, and there is a hierarchy in these trails. That yellow line that you see running through the middle is a 12-foot asphalt trail that will run the length of that park and provide that connectivity to the amenities throughout. The blue line is a asphalt trail that will run adjacent to a 9-foot park strip throughout all the major roads in the development. And then the red dotted line is envisioned as a 2 to 4 foot wide soft trail that could be decomposed granite or a pea gravel, that will provide that more private experience for walkers, trail runners. In a good snow year, we have the slope for even some cross-country skiing potentially. Moving on, there's been a lot of questions about the ownership of the open space. So the gray areas are those programmed groomed parks. Those will be owned and maintained by the HOA. The orange will be dedicated to the city, but maintained by the HOA. We feel like the HOA will be in a better position to maintain that natural open space in perpetuity. Moving on, I wanted to give a more detailed example of the amenities we envision here. As you know, under the PC zone, the Jones Ranch will require an additional 10 amenities beyond the base requirements. Here are some visual examples of those amenities. We see a real need for a large scale amenity package early in the development. And so what you see here is that Eastern Park that's east of UN11, that'll be about 13 acres. We envision a large scale clubhouse and pool. The development plan would require that that pool be built by the 200th residential unit, and the clubhouse, which would be a kind of a fitness centric clubhouse, a private amenity, will be built by the 400th unit. We want to ensure that these amenities are built soon and benefit the residents as soon as possible. What I'm going to leave out tonight that's in the development plan is a pretty detailed design guideline booklet for the architecture, as well as we've spent about a year working with your staff and your general plan consultants on an in-depth analysis of the utilities and infrastructure required. And I won't get into that tonight, but we do have a representative from Hanson L. Luce, JUB and Horax on the call tonight to answer any questions you have. So that is it. I will.
We've got about a minute and a half for questions, if there's any questions from the council. Councilmember Whitelock.
So Chris, a minute and a half isn't enough. Is there another way I can get my questions answered?
That was the time that had been allotted. If you want to.
Okay, I'll shoot. In the proposal, it says in 15 years, the commercial would go back to residential. That's problematic for me. You should know that. I'd like to know what the net density is. I'd like to know if you have financing and if it's still viable financing after COVID-19. I'd like to know how many units you're wanting to build.
Okay, so I'll tackle the first. When you mentioned the density, it's a blend of, the blended average is 5 units an acre, but with these several different land uses, it'll range from anywhere from a unit per acre up to 8 to 9 units an acre. The development plan does allow for some flexibility in where that goes. We've got a lot of input from staff on making sure that there's flexibility to move those housing types around to make sure there's a mix throughout. But it'll range from anywhere from a one unit, 1.5 units an acre up to 9 or 10, but the blended average is 5.
So when you're telling me 5 per acre, is that net or gross?
Net of what? Net of the parks?
Net acre. What I'm trying to ascertain is how many units you plan to put in there. What I'm trying to look at specifically is the number of high density versus the others. And I don't see that in the PowerPoint.
No, and I could provide you an approximate breakdown. I mean, the plan is to provide some flexibility because it is likely a 20-year build out. It's difficult to say this is exactly the number. Ivory's building products today that we weren't building 4 years ago as the market evolves. And so we feel like this plan provides a good balance of this, Euclidean zoning boundaries. So you have a good sense of where these housing types will be located, yet some flexibility to accommodate the market. Really quickly, the other question you had is about financing. Ivory does not borrow money to buy land. And so did I lose you?
Nope. I just.
There is any concern there. We do not involve investors or debt in the land acquisition. We will be the sole developer and builder of this project.
Councilmember Green.
He didn't answer the 15-year, after 15
Oh,
years, the
yes,
commercial
thank you.
flips.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of discussion with council members and staff about that. The intent is not to hold that out, but we do feel like there needs to be a plan. And I think that Zion's public finance analysis is intended to help us not only scale the appropriate amount of acreage, but in the event that we come to that 15-year mark, and let's say we've built out 8 acres, and we're trying to figure out, what can go in the remaining, 4 acres, and there just isn't a demand. We want the option to not necessarily fill it with high density, but whatever residential would be allowed, because we may be at a point at that stage where we're capped at 2,960 units. So whatever would be allowed at that 15-year mark, we want to have an option for some type of development in the event that there is not a demand in the market for more commercial.
All right, thank you, Brian.
But the keynote point, Councilmember Whitlock, is the density stays the same. There's a cap on it, and that density is allocated. There's this collar flexibility within those villages, and we haven't scaled it all out because it's a potentially 20-year build out. But in no circumstance could we go beyond that 2,960 units.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Green, Councilmember Worthen.
I will just, Brian, you and Chris and I met to talk about this project, and I am disappointed. We talked about a whole lot of things that didn't meet city code, and yet there's a brand new 103-page document, and not one thing was changed in this to meet city code. I'm wondering, are we going to see that kind of resistance when we get to the master development agreement?
The items we discussed in length the trail design, and the trail design that I've presented you tonight was heavily guided by staff and us as the applicant. And we're open to continue to discuss that. If there's guidance that where you want to see different cross sections, we're open to that. The second item that we discussed when we met was the affordable housing requirement. I didn't present anything tonight on that. We plan to comply with that requirement in the ordinance.
But we're talking about gross acreage of parks. We're talking about setbacks. I went through the code the other night. I spent about 4 hours on this, and I put together a little checklist. And when I put the checklist together on what the code requires and what you presented in the 103-page document, there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 9 to 12 items that are not compliant out of 25, and another 7 or 8 that are marginally questionable. If we go into this, and Councilmember Whitelock's hit the first one, the commercial, because then it doesn't become a PC zone if it doesn't have commercial in it. And if we have an intent to wipe out the commercial at some point in time and say, well, it can go away, then it's not a PC zone and it doesn't meet the intent of the PC zone to even start with. But there's about 12 or 13 other items, maybe as many as 16, that there are questions on. And I don't see it. We're going to have a lot more answers, and we're probably going to have to see a lot more flexibility in the development agreement and to meet city code than what we have right now. So that I'll leave that and let Councilmember Worthen jump in.
Well, just to answer your question or comment, Councilmember Green, I don't think the intent is to resist your feedback. We appreciate your feedback. I think it's more continuing this conversation. I would love to get a list of those 12 to 9 items that you feel are non-compliant. One thing I am concerned about is we did make a submittal last Thursday, and I don't know if you're looking at the latest submittal, but if I could get a copy of your items, I would love to go through with staff and make sure that we're complying with the ordinance. I mean, this is our first presentation. In no way are we saying this is our final presentation. We'd love to get input and fine tune this to make sure that you feel like we're complying with the ordinance.
All right, Councilmember Worthen.
Can you go to the, I don't know which slide it is, but the map that shows the different colors on it with the density sizes and where the commercial's at? Because I'll tell you, my biggest concern is how much, I shouldn't say how much, how little.
Can everybody see that?
Yeah, I mean, so you've
Okay.
got the red spot where that's in there.
Yes.
I mean, if you go out there, everything is residential. There's nothing that's commercial. There's no grocery stores. There's nothing. There's no home improvement stores. There's nothing for people. And I just don't feel like that is going to be enough, especially when you go to 8200 South, you've got a gas station, and then you've got you building homes, you've got the school, but that's it. There's a gas station. 78, there's nothing. Then you come down over here. I mean, I just don't want to eat up all of our commercial space, and we need to keep more commercial in there.
Concur.
No, Councilmember Worthen, that's a great point. I want you to know that we've spent quite a bit of time analyzing this to the extent where we reached out to a handful of commercial developers in this market, including Boyer Company, Woodbury Corporation, to get input on how could we scale this? What is sustainable at full build out? The answers they gave us was less than 12 acres. And so we've been working with staff trying to get a sense of how to make this work. We would love to see a larger scale commercial use here, because it would be a great amenity for the Jones Ranch residents. And where we ended up was we felt like we needed a third party to consult us on what is appropriate at full build out. 20 years from now, what is sustainable? And that's when we engaged Zions Public Finance to complete this market study to give not only Ivory, but the city some guidance on what commercial is appropriate in the context of the commercial assets that exist in West Jordan today. So we're open to it. We're open to discussing it and finding an amount of commercial that you feel comfortable with and that we know we can execute.
Okay, as long as we're willing to discuss it, that's great. Yeah.
All right, so this was intended as a quick overview and introduction to the project. Obviously, the council is ready to jump into some of the details, and there's a desire to have further conversations. So we'll work with staff to make sure that we have the appropriate amount of time to have a good conversation. And we'll bring this back to the council for further discussion at another point.
I want to thank your staff publicly. We spent an enormous amount of time over a year working on this, and they've been excellent. So thanks again for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is our Transjordan landfill update, and that is with David Newton, who is the board member representing West Jordan there. Let me switch this over real quick and bring in David as a panelist. Let's see. All right, Mr. Newton, did that do the trick and bring you over?
You sure? Was it okay? I tried to get through it, man, but it's a lot of info.
Brian, you're still there.
Brian, you're still broadcasting, buddy.
There we go. And there's Dave Newton.
Howdy.
So let me stop sharing and you can start sharing.
Okay. I'll move through this pretty quick. For those of you who don't know, I have been the representative for West Jordan on the Transjordan board since 2006. And it's been a great opportunity to do so. Are you seeing my screen now?
Not yet.
Oh boy, what happened? Because I just did it. We did this yesterday. Well, it's showing on my screen.
So if you should be at the bottom of the screen, an option
Yeah.
for share screen, and then it should let you pick if you've got multiple monitors or choose between desktop application.
Okay, hang on a sec. There we go. And
Oh, and it looks like it started.
now,
There
how
we
about
go.
now?
Yep,
We're good?
you're in business.
Okay, great. I'll briefly explain the organization especially for your new council members. Transjordan is made up of 7 entities, West Jordan being one of the 7, and you can see the others there. Transjordan also belongs to New Era, which is the Northern Utah Environmental Resource Agency. New Era was put into effect to work with, have Transjordan work with other landfills throughout the Northern Utah, and to be able to engage in projects that would be beneficial for all of us. So Transjordan is one of the 6 entities that belong to New Era. And one of the projects that we've been involved with, and these projects are all voluntary. We don't have to join any of them, but we, along with 3 other entities, purchased the Bayview landfill 3 years ago, knowing that the Transjordan would go away sooner or later, and we needed to make sure we had a place for our solid waste to go. So that was accomplished, and fortunately we are in a position to be able to use that landfill in the future. Transjordan has a lifespan left of 12 years. So the question is what happens at the closing of this landfill out here? There'll be no more landfills permitted in the county. That's just not going to happen. So all our waste will go to transfer stations for shipment to the Bayview landfill. And Bayview is about 43 miles south of here. We're going to build 2 transfer fill stations. One is going to be next to Sandy Public Works, and that is in the process of being developed and worked on, so that we'll have that area there. Sandy is donating some land, and we're working with the Sandy Suburban Sanitary District to buy another 3 acres to make that possible for that transfer station there. We will also have.
Is that on 90? Is that 90th South on the freeway? Is that about where that
Pretty close. Is? Pretty close. It's 7th West and about 86 South, somewhere
okay.
there.
I just want to make sure I was thinking of the right facility. I don't know Sandy that well, but
yeah,
I remember seeing it. Thank you.
It's on the south end of Sandy Public Works, their new public work office. The other transfer station.
Almost in West Jordan.
Almost across the river. The other one will be at Transjordan. We will use the facilities that we have there right now, as well as build a transfer station. And the cost of those transfer stations is $5 to $10 million each, depending on when we build them and what the need is. But we are looking at that to try and get those monies worked out so that we can be able to do so. This was a chart that we put together last December. As you see, I won't go into a lot of detail, but our costs are going to go way up by the time we start transferring land or transferring all our waste down to Bayview. And I'll explain that further in a few minutes. You will have that chart to look at, so you can take a look at it at a better time.
Dave, can I ask you a question?
Sure, go ahead, Kayleen.
Is the one by Sandy Public Works, does it have to be there? Because To me, that seems like it's almost right across the river from the Big Bend thing that we're
Across the
building.
river from where?
The Big Bend project, isn't that near there?
Yeah, further to the west, between the river and where this will go. This will go on the east side of 700 East, and you'll have the fur breeders property between us.
Okay, it's on the east side. I had it on the west side.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, on the east side. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Hey, can I jump in there just for a second, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely, Calvin.
The other thing, Councilmember Whitelock, first, Sandy's donating the money, but they're donating the land, but they wanted, because of the way the garbage trucks are going around, to save fuel, they wanted a transfer station on the east side, and that was the most convenient place for it. And so that it doesn't, so that they have a transfer station on the east side and the west side.
Yeah,
Doesn't seem very far east.
That is true, and that will be effectively used by Murray, Midvale, Sandy, and Draper, and some of West Jordan too, and probably some of South Jordan. Yeah, yeah, and we've been working on a transfer station at that point for the last 10 years. We even looked at the fur breeders' property to do so, but couldn't work out anything with them. But Sandy's willing to donate part of that land. They will get a hosting fee that will come with every ton of garbage, and I'm not sure what that fee is at this point. So the question comes is how we're going to pay for that. What we're proposing is that we bond for the transfer stations, and then we raise the tipping fees. We propose that a $2 per ton increase each year for the next 14 years. And let me show you how that breaks down. Or if we don't, then we would hold off raising yearly fees and do a great big fee increase in 2032 when we have to start shipping everything. Last year, or our fiscal year to date, we have tipped this is just residential, not commercial. 22,890 tons have been tipped. So we estimate it'll be 34,000 plus tons by the year end. At $18 a ton, that equals 618,000 plus for needed in the budget, which Denise has been talking about. We have just under 30,000 residential cans. So that averages out at 1.2 tons per can per year. So if we do a $2 per ton increase, that equals 20 cents per month per can, okay? And like I say, that is just the residential cost. That's just the tipping fees. Now, obviously, as Denise showed, you have other costs that go into that, but the tipping fee at the landfill only amounts to that 20 cents per month. Okay, follow that? Moving on then. Beginning in 2033, all the waste will go to Bayview. Until that time, we will fill up Transjordan and cover it and close it, and then everything will have to go to Bayview, and that'll be by trucks. And most of it will probably go down Redwood Road, down the west side of Utah Lake. Some of it from the Sandy might go to the freeway. It'll depend on what the haulers prefer to do. The cost per ton for landfilling and transport is expected to be about $48 per ton. And that's compared to our $18 now. The average in the United States right now is $45 per ton right now. That's right now. And who knows what it'll be in another 12, 13 years. So we have one of the cheapest tipping fees in the country right now for a Class D landfill. So if we do $2 per ton every year, that's what it'll look like. And as much as we don't want to see those raises, like I say, every $2 amounts to 20 cents per ton per year, or 20 cents per ton, 20 cents per can per month increase, which means that if we do the 14 increases, it will mean a total residential increase of $280 per can per month. So that's what it'll be by the time. $2. Oh, did I say? Okay, $2.80 per can per month. But then you have your hauling, your costs, which will be in addition to that. Let me go back. Any questions to that point before we go on?
So quick question on those proposed increases.
Yeah.
With the majority of the funding being needed after we start shipping it, what will the additional increase be used for between now and the time that it starts being?
It's building up reserves. It will build up reserves and pay for the bonding costs. The chart that I showed you originally, that had built into it a $1 increase. If we do this, then we won't have to do the big jump in 12 years, and that's where I need your help and your decisions. We can hold off and not do those increases, but we've seen what happens when we do a huge increase all at once. So to me, I think for me personally, I would recommend doing these small increases every year and cover those costs, help pay for that bonding, build up a reserve so that we cover that at the time that we close Transjordan.
Thank you.
Anything else? Let me talk about green waste. Green waste at Transjordan will go away in 3 years unless we can find another entity that can take it and process it. I'm working to try and find another alternative, but I don't have anything yet. Wasatch Integrated up in Layton says they might have a use for it, but not yet. So we don't know what the situation will be. Again, that's going to be something that we'll have to deal with. Part of the reason for that is we were on leased land where we were doing our green waste. Leased land from Kennecott. That lease goes away next year. So we have purchased enough property to continue our operation and to build a transfer station out there. But it's not enough property to do the green waste. And South Jordan would not permit it anyway. South Jordan wants us out of there. We have said that we will not process green waste if they'll allow the transfer station. So that's kind of the agreement we've made with South Jordan at this point, that the transfer station will be allowed, but the green waste has to go. And
Dave, I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm guessing this was back when at least you were mayor, but I remember a discussion many years ago that the reason that we came up with green waste and recycles is to stop filling up the landfill faster.
True.
Now here we're seeing that green waste is 3 years from now there will not be any. So that means if we don't find someone to take it, it's going to go into the landfill anyway. So I'm not pointing this at you. I'm kind of pointing at the Transjordan landfill. They didn't want to fill up the landfill with green waste and recycles, but now they're kind of saying, let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And the whole thing has changed because of the fact that our leases on that land we were hoping we were hoping to extend those leases. That's not going to happen. So we're looking at it further, and there's a lot of pressure from Daybreak to get us out of there. Besides, so you know, we've looked at it and tried to figure out any other ways to do it, and at this point, don't have any other options that we're aware of.
So it sounds like we're just.
Gosh, if only we had something that Daybreak wanted.
we haven't talked about filling up some of the holes that Kennecott's made out there. That's not going to happen either. So that's where it's at. Let me talk briefly about recycling. That was pictures of recycled materials that came to the landfill in December. As you can see, a good portion of the residuals are coming back to us. A certain amount always does, but we were getting far beyond what's necessary or what we want, and that's because of China's situation a year ago. There are only 3 items that are being recycled right now that are making any money, and that's corrugated cardboard, metals, and number 1 and number 2 plastics. And number 1 and number 2 are generally bottles with a neck and a lid. We would suggest that that our residents not putting anything in the recycle bin except those 3 things. Now our recyclers say they're taking them all, which they are, but a good portion of it is coming back to us. And it seems crazy to go through that whole process and have it end up back in the same place. So that's it. I'm open.
Well, by the sounds of that last one, it sounds like we just should look at dumping the recycle program.
I don't necessarily disagree with you.
I'm just,
Dumping,
I mean, there's really only 2 things
Dirk would
that
be
people
proud.
put in there: the cardboard and the plastics. I don't know of anybody that puts metal in their recycle bin, but you know, we as citizens, and Dave, you're a citizen of West Jordan too. We're paying for a recycle bin that's basically just going to the dump.
But I think it's cheaper for us at this point to have the recycle bin go to the dump than for us to have more garbage, actually.
Well, it'd be cheaper to take it straight to the dump rather than go through the recycler, correct? Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking too.
If we didn't already have a contract with ACE for recycling, but we do.
Yeah. Yep. You're right. So those are the issues. Like I said, we will raise the fees, the $2 this year. Like I said, that amounts to 20 cents per month per can. Beyond that, I'm open to your suggestions of what you'd like me to convey to the board. And I will add one other thing. Temporarily, we've stopped allowing residential vehicles from coming into the landfill because of the COVID-19. But we've got a board meeting next week, and we are exploring ways to do that so that we don't hurt our staff or aren't putting other people at risk, to see if we can get it back, especially since so many people are working in their yards and have things that they want to bring out. We'll try and get that back into so that happens. What we don't want to have happen is having our people out there infected, and if we lose 3 or 4 people like the county has, we could end up being shut down anyway. So we want to make sure our staff are protected, and then allow as much as we can to come back in. That's it.
Any other questions for Mr. Newton?
May I make a comment, Mr. Chair?
Please.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. Thanks so much, Mr. Newton, for the presentation. I agree with your assessment. Instead of having a huge increase way down the road, it just seems like on issues such as fee increase, property tax increase, utility increase, council member pay, all of these charged emotional topics when you hear a tax or a fee or a hike, or or increase. If we could have something that mirrors inflation, that's a small incremental sustainable increase that we can definitely review every year or even on a quarterly basis, it helps to not kick the can down the road for political expediency, to not be someone that voted for a fee increase because that might look bad on a campaign. And they just seem so emotionally charged, and no one, if we could just make this sustainable, already built in to where we don't have to open a utility bill and see a 33% increase in fees. I look at Tooele, you know, with their property tax, what was it, about 140% increase? I think if we can be smart and sustainable, and everyone would recognize that the way the world goes around is for there to be incremental inflation in income and expenses. So I agree with your assessment to make it small, incremental, sustainable, instead of kicking it down the road and having a huge increase later on. That doesn't really help anyone. Thank you.
All right. That concludes the work session time. We will start up City Council meeting here at 7 o'clock. Just a couple quick comments before we take a short break. I'd invite the council, while we're on break, I'll hit the mute all button, but I'd also invite you to shut off the cameras until after the Pledge of Allegiance, just so that there's just so we can minimize the distractions. For members of the public who would like to participate in citizen comments who might be watching online through other venues, please take a moment and make sure you log into the meeting. Here's the information so that you can log in. This will be the only way you can participate live through comments tonight. There's the information to log in through the web. This is definitely preferred if you only have the option to join by phone. Here are any of the numbers you could call in. There's the meeting ID and password as well. But please use this time as we have a short break. If you'd like to participate in citizen comments, please join. That'll be following, citizen comments will be following the pledge. So with that, we will adjourn the work session.
Chris?
Yes.
Can you put me on the list for citizen comments? I would talk about COVID-19.
Absolutely.
With the hospital.
Absolutely. So we'll adjourn the work session portion of tonight's meeting, and we will reconvene here at the top of the hour. And again, I'd encourage council to dim your videos now and bring it back after the pledge. Thank you.
Chris, you're the only one. You were the only unmuted one.
Yep, as host, that is true. And I moved to mute myself shortly after, so back on mute for me too. Thanks, Zach. It is about 2 minutes to the top of the hour, so just want to give council 2-minute warning that we're about to start back up here. All right, it is now 7:00 p.m. on Wednesday, April 4th, 2020. We will reconvene West Jordan City Council meeting. All members of the council are present and accounted for. We also have joining us Mayor Dirk Burton, CAO Corbin Lee, and various other staff members tonight. Thank you to all who will be participating in this portion of the meeting. First item on our agenda, the next item on our agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. And tonight we will be led by Brian Clegg, who is Director of Public Works. Brian?
Will the audience please arise? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, I would invite the council to turn cameras back on, and we'll proceed with the rest of the meeting. Next item on the agenda is going to be citizen comments, and this is a little bit different, obviously, than when we traditionally have council meeting in council chambers. The only way to participate tonight live in the meeting is through the online forum. So up on the right side of the screen, you'll see if you'd like to participate in the comments, how you can join us. And if you don't have the computer, if you only have the ability to join by phone, there's a variety of numbers. Any of those numbers will get you to the same meeting. You just need the meeting ID and the meeting password. Citizen comments is your only chance to speak tonight. You can speak about anything that you'd like. It doesn't have to be on the agenda. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. And as you do, this is your opportunity to be heard. Council doesn't typically respond to questions or engage in any back and forth, but that's our time to sit and listen to you and hear your thoughts and comments. The council does require that those participating help maintain the quorum of the meeting. And to go along with that, any anonymous comments will not be accepted during the electronic meeting. So as you log in, please make sure it's got your name there, your actual name, and not just some sort of web handle. And then please know that verbal attacks against others or being disrespectful could potentially result in being dismissed from the meeting. So having said that, when you do join the meeting, this is what you'll see, something along these lines. Might be a little bit different because you'll see what we're presenting right now. But at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the option to raise hand. So if anybody would like to make comments, please, once you're logged in, hit the little icon to raise your hand so that I know to call on you. When you do, it'll turn green, and then we'll know that you're wanting to speak. When you're called on, I'll go through person by person. When you're called on, it will pop up a little box like this saying the host would like you to unmute your microphone. You'll just click unmute and you'll be given those 3 minutes to speak. So we know that Dave Newton wanted to speak. So let me switch this over for him.
Okay, can you hear me?
Sure can. You've got
Perfect.
3 minutes.
Thank you. I wanted to address you as a governing board member of Jordan Valley Hospital. Alan Anderson and I both serve on that board. And I wanted just to give you an update on what the hospital is doing there. We have introduced a number of different things to make it possible that we don't spread the virus and that we take care of people coming in there. Everybody has to be checked when they come in, and actually no visitors are allowed except under some very strict circumstances. We have an 18 bed COVID unit that is dedicated strictly to COVID infected patients. Right now we have 2 people is all in there, and 4 were just ruled out as having the virus, and a couple of others just today that have symptoms but haven't been checked. So we have great capacity, and we have another 10 bed unit that is set up if we need it. So that's 28 beds at Jordan Valley. Hopefully we won't need them, but I want you to understand that we are in good shape for taking care of anyone who comes to us regarding the COVID-19. It's been very, very hard. We had one nurse who was infected and was later admitted to the hospital. But other than that, our staff has been kept pretty clean, and that's good. And the one thing that we do need possibly that the public could help is some homemade masks that can be donated to the hospital for when people come and they don't have masks. We don't want to use surgical masks because we want to save those for the staff. So if anybody out there is good with a sewing machine, you can make some masks and drop them off at the front door of the hospital. We appreciate that. That's all. And like I say, we're doing a good job. The hospital is really a great asset for West Jordan, and I appreciate being involved there, and I think Alan does too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Newton. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak tonight? All right, not seeing any other hands. So just a quick reminder that we have added additional methods for you to share your comments. In addition to participating during our council meetings, we do have a message line that's open and available anytime. Please feel free to call and share your thoughts there, or you can also send an email to councilcomments@westjordan.utah.gov. Next item on the agenda is communication. So we will start with the mayor's report. Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Council Member McConaughey, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity we have to meet, even if it is virtually, as we utilize our technology. Under the circumstances, it's more important than ever for us to band together and move forward with the work we have in West Jordan. So thank you to David and Alan for putting together these meetings and making this happen virtually. It's sure a lot better than not having it all, and there are some advantages I found doing it this way. Staff throughout the city has been challenged to find new ways to communicate and operate with residents as they're working from home or telemarketing in other ways, and work with the customers, but they've been diligent in doing so, and the work continues to go forward. They've been very resilient in their efforts. The hard work they put in has allowed us to initiate a soft close of the city facilities that we began earlier this week. We're now processing more business by phone and online than we've ever done before. Our development services is online, so they can do all of that remotely. They don't have to come to the building at all. In addition, you continue to pay your utility bills online or drop them off in the box outside. So I was very pleased. I know that's something we've been working on for some time. And so some of the things we're learning from these experiences, I think will carry on and be some benefits to the city in long term. Now, if you happen by any of our city facilities, there's a big note on the door that'll have the phone numbers of who you can call and what departments can help you. You could be able to get in the building. Maybe you could find somebody if you look around far enough to do that. But the better thing is to make the phone call when you're there. Then if that person is here, they can direct you. But most likely you can do it without even coming to the building at all. We would encourage that. Reduce the traveling and the traffic that way. We have moved to a live answering calls in our city. We used to have a phone tree when you called. That phone tree is been put on hold, and you can do it when you call. You get a live person that answers each time you call now during regular business hours. We're thrilled about that. I think that's a great move toward better customer service, that we can maintain this even after our employees come back to work in the building, if we choose to do that as well. We continue to coordinate with both the county and the state in regard to this fight against the coronavirus. And I've been actively engaged with the county leadership and sharing my thoughts with them where appropriate and getting questions answered. As you may be aware, yesterday, the county extended their state of emergency through July, and we are planning on extending ours at this meeting today. So we're following the Salt Lake County health order and encouraging all of our residents to do so as well. As you know, we've closed our playgrounds a couple of weeks ago, and we've roped off the pavilions and some areas like that and put some signage up to help educate our residents. However, with the playgrounds closed, our parks and trails are still open. We've had lots of questions about the sport courts, and residents are allowed to utilize the courts in small family groups, keeping their 6-foot distance if they're with people outside their groups. We tend to get so focused on the challenges that sometimes with operating under our current circumstances, we forget the positive things that are happening. There are some good positive things happening. Let me show you one of the businesses. A lot of businesses are struggling, but one of the businesses in West Jordan, Papa Pita's, is doing very well. So in fact, their workload has increased so much that they've recently hired 30 additional employees. And so when placing your orders for online food, I would hope you think of shopping local, do your local online shopping, and purchase things like Papa Pita's. They provide things such as the Great Grains breads, the Baba's bagels, and English muffins, and Maya's tortillas. So thank you for the time that you have spent. So thank you, Council, for the time you spent with Denise and me studying the budget and providing feedback over the last few weeks. And we've done that virtually, but we've made some good progress on that. And it won't be that much longer. You'll be seeing more budget coming out like you did your work session today. But the time is coming that we'll need to get that to you. And we're looking forward to that. And I appreciate having your input so we can make it not just the mayor's budget, but also reflect the council's budget as well. So I've taken your comments to heart and made several adjustments on our budget to make sure that's going to work. Earlier today, I met with UDOT virtually, and they are going to be postponing their regular scheduling, updating the signals throughout the city. They usually do that once or twice over the years, and they had scheduled to do that this year. Due to the traffic conditions being so low the way they are, they don't think it's feasible to make adjustments because they'll just need to do it again when we get back to our normal schedule. However, 40th West and 7800 South, after that construction is complete, they'll do adjustments on that schedule. We'll have that there. There's been some rumors the Jordan School District has ceased doing school lunches. That is just a rumor. Other than this week, because of spring break, the school lunches will resume next week and they'll continue to do so. And the very last comment I want to say is this Sunday is Easter. Happy Easter to every council member. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe Councilmember Lamb may have had a question for you.
Thank you, Chair McConney. Mayor Burton, can you kind of talk a little bit more about the state of emergency that goes till July? From what I understand, that is not a closure till July. That is just a state of emergency for funding from federal grants, from what I understand. That the July 6th extension doesn't have anything to do with the stay at home, stay safe, correct?
That is correct. So you may recall when they initiated their declaration of emergency, that happened prior to their stay home, stay safe. So that is very important for the county for them to get funding, which the state and the county need to declare those emergency declarations in order to obtain funding. We are also in a declaration of emergency, which we plan to extend that if the council chooses to do so, so that we can submit our needs to the county and to the state. And our goal is to be reimbursed for the additional expenses we've had during this emergency. But you're right, that emergency can continue and they can change their stay home procedures anytime they want without affecting their declaration of emergency.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And there was also a question from Councilmember Pack.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mayor, for the update. A question, please, regarding our summertime activities, such as fireworks, parade, since that would be in the month of July. Is there anything that you've discussed regarding that?
Yes, there's been a lot of discussion. It's been all over the board, as you can imagine. At this point, we are still holding the course. We are waiting to see what happens. We know that the Western Stampede is a fantastic opportunity, an event that we hold in West Jordan, and we were looking forward to that happening, and we have not canceled those plans as of yet. We're waiting to see what happens. I heard on the news today that Utah may have reached its peak. If that is correct, and that would be very exciting if it is, then perhaps by July we can be, I don't know what normal is anymore, but we may be able to continue to do that. We're holding them tight and holding our breath, hoping we can do that. But we will adjust if we need to, if the conditions direct us to do so.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right. And next up, we have the CAO's report from Corbin Lee. And while Corbin, you're speaking, I'm going to get Jared in line ready to go behind you. Corbin.
Thank you, Council. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. I want to update you on 3 items. 1, budget preparation, 2, economic development, and 3, an update from the community engagement department. As you know, the work on the budget preparation is paramount currently. We have a projected shortfall that we've discussed with you, and we're working on every way we can think of to find ways to fill that. We're discussing currently, we took the hard, difficult step of offering a voluntary reduction in force. And we've had a few employees come forward that are exploring that potential option. Over the next few months, we're going to look at every possible way we can to help our budgeted revenues match our budgeted expenditures. And we'll keep having discussions with you about the budget as we go forward. In economic development, I want to let you know Walker Edison's anticipated to complete their tenant improvements to the old Shopco building on 90th South. They're looking at finishing in June and moving their worldwide headquarters to that location in June. So that will have about 200 employees at that location. So that's great news on the economic development front. Nice to fill one of those empty big boxes. In terms of community engagement, there's a couple of things I want to make you aware of. Our records staff are working very hard to train representatives from each department on how to fill grandma requests. So we can be a little more responsive on filling grandma requests, a little more decentralized on filling grandma requests. They're doing the first training session on Thursday, and they're reviewing and updating grandma workflow and grandma tracking. In terms of events, we have canceled all city events through the month of May due to the coronavirus. And while we're challenged providing the event experience to our residents in our normal way, the community engagement team's looking hard to find ways to be creative. For example, we had 26,000 Easter eggs that were planned for the traditional Easter egg hunt that we had to figure out, what do we do with these things? The community engagement team determined to distribute those Easter eggs with the police department and the school district through the Title I schools that are offering the grab and go lunches. And so they took those Easter eggs and packaged them into smaller bags and worked with the DARE officers to give out the Easter eggs to the kids, the families who were probably needed a little bit of extra help, those who were already getting the free lunches through the school district. They were able to do that without adding extra trips in the community or endangering staff in any way. And there's a video showcasing the fantastic DARE officers and their work with these kids on Facebook. Just want to say Lindsay Schoenbrunn and Marie Tietza, who did a great job on this project, working with our police department. That video on Facebook highlights one other thing community engagement's doing. They're trying to do a new series of videos that will be shared on social media. They want to have the council involved, so watch for some email to council members to encourage and invite your participation on some of these videos from time to time. That's it for me, Chair.
And looks like we've got a question or comment from Councilmember Pack.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mr. Lee. Appreciate the information, and thanks so much for repurposing the items that we traditionally would use otherwise so that they don't go to waste. And I'm grateful for the mayor's staff deciding to go with the voluntary reduction, whether that is a retirement or a consolidation or days off where people might be able to spend time with their family, where time might be more important than money. I'm grateful. I think that mentally, emotionally helps when things are voluntary as much as possible. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And just to double check, you mentioned canceling everything through May. I assume, is that inclusive of our traditional Memorial Day tribute, since that would be toward the very end of May?
Right, those are canceled, yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
We're in such an unknown environment right now. We think anything that's occurring before Memorial Day up through Memorial Day weekend is just uncertain. And so we've went ahead and canceled those.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other comments there. So we'll jump order a little bit and we'll go to Jared Smith, Risk Manager, for an update.
Thank you, Council. Just want to give you an update on the coronavirus and some of the efforts that the city's been making and our emergency operations, what's been going on. First, globally, I think that you start seeing some of the countries in Europe are starting to open back up and decrease some of their measures they've taken to shut down and lock people home. And so some of those measures are starting to be taken out. And so that's a positive sign. I think in Europe, you're starting to see some of the declines that they're hoping for. Some of those peaks I think they felt like they've hit some of those peaks and now they're starting to decrease. So as those models get updated, I think initially the models that the United States was basing our information off of was coming out of China, and then later in Italy. Both of those have proven not to be very good models. And so as the more information, more data has come in, I think the United States has updated their modeling. And so some of our modeling is looking pretty good, and if you've seen some of the updates on the models, not seeing nearly the amount of infections or the amount of deaths that have come out on some of the initial models. But there is still a dire threat from the coronavirus. There's still a threat to the hospital systems, as Mayor Newton talked about. And so just wanted to keep up that, maintain the current level of measures that are being taken across the country and across the state. I think those are still a good measures, and we still continue to follow those. The presidential order to suspend or to kind of keep the stay home measures, that has gone. That's going to be was extended through the end of April. So far, the county's health order will expire on April 13th. They say that they're going to come out with a new health order, probably extending the stay safe, stay home measures. We expect that to come out either Thursday or Friday of this week. So we'll see more and have more information before the weekend, hopefully. We anticipate that the governor is going to extend some of the measures through the end of April, possibly into May. So we're just waiting to see what some of those measures are when they come out with. But I did want to let you know, if you haven't been watching the news or not staying up to it, like some of us are, some of us that are maybe not as maybe a little bit not as healthy, just kind of watching all these things constantly. There are, so far in Utah, there are 1,846 cases in the state as of yesterday, that was as of today. There's still 13 deaths across the state. Unfortunately, the trends are still that the rate of infection is doubling every 6 days. That hasn't really gone down. We anticipate, or the modeling anticipates, that the peak was supposed to be sometime next week. They've kind of, some models have suggested it's going to be as early as this weekend, which fingers crossed, we hope to see some of the highest numbers of infection rate go down starting this weekend and into next week. So that's all positive news. I think even in New York, where the hot spots are, even though the news is still bad though, and still pretty dire in New York, we're starting to see some of the decreases there, and possibly some of the peaking there in New York as well. So hopefully we're getting through some of the worst of it. But I just want to let you know what the Emergency Operations Center, some of the departments have been working on, quite innovative things for coming from the fire department. They came up with a system to build some boxes with some UV lights in them that would use to disinfect masks. They found this from other agencies that are using, and some of the medical professionals have advised that you could use these UV lights to disinfect masks. So they're building 6 of these boxes that will be distributed to all the different departments around the different fire stations in the city, and then to the police department, and then also to public works, so that they can reuse these masks and get a little bit more life out of them than what we have. So far, the fire department does feel confident and comfortable that they have enough PPE to get us through the next 30 days, which hopefully gets us through the worst of the pandemic. And so we've got a lot of people working on getting the supplies, making sure that the city has enough supplies to get us through. And the fire department's been really great to make sure that they've been on top of it, and they've been sharing those resources out to the rest of the city, which is great. Another innovative thing that the fire department came up with is they took a pressure washer essentially and turned it into a disinfecting spray, a sprayer that they could use to spray out ambulance boxes, the ambulances themselves, and the fire trucks. They spray this disinfectant and leave it on there for a few minutes until it dries, and it's supposed to kill any of the viruses and other kind of germs that are on the vehicles. So again, Public Works is going to take that information, see if they can mimic it to use in some of their vehicles as well. So good news there. And then the biggest question that we have, anytime we deal with FEMA, there's always a question about how we're going to be reimbursed. The state is going to be having a training tomorrow. There's a lot of information coming out on how to, on what matters can be reimbursable, what things are going to be reimbursable in this disaster. And so we're going to be watching that closely. A lot of documentation, a lot of work is going into keeping track of all the expenditures and making sure that we're doing what we need to do so that we could get reimbursement from FEMA when it comes down to it. But more training will come out of that, and the more information will be, as we get more information there, we'll be sending that information out. I believe that's all the updates that I have. One of the updates, Council, that I did want to let you know that from the police department side is there's a lot of scams, a lot of phishing attempts that are going out with coronavirus. There's certainly a lot of crimes that are starting to target our vulnerable populations with the elderly or the sick, or maybe the lower income people that we have in the city. So the police department wants to make sure that anyone that is aware of that, make sure that gets reported so we can track that down to the fullest extent we can. The police department wants to make sure that we're taking care of our residents, no matter where they are or who they are. So That was kind of the big thing coming out. We're watching those scams and some of those crimes that are coming out against related to the coronavirus, unfortunately. But that's all I have for the update.
Thank you, Jared. We did have a question with Councilmember Whitelock first.
Thank you.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
My question is there any testing for that UV light? What's the efficacy rate of that for those masks?
So I'm not sure what the testing is, and I'm not sure of the science behind it. I apologize that I'm not up on the science on it. The fire department is pretty much, I think they ran it past their medical doctor to ensure that their science was fair and accurate on it. And so I think as you put the masks and those kinds of things under the UV lights and give it the UV treatment, it breaks down the efficacy of the equipment. And so I think they say that you can use it up to 10 times, but the fire department, in an effort to be safe, is only recommending using it 4 times. So 4 times, giving it the treatment and then disposing of the equipment.
I hope we're right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other questions from the council. So, Jared, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, council office updates or reports.
Thank you, City Council. And I wanted to report that in the first week of the mayor's soft closure of City Hall, we have been successful in keeping communication open with the staff. They've been marvelous to respond to us quickly and proficiently and professionally. So I wanted to reach out and tell Denise, Rob, Brian, Scott, all of them, how much we appreciate they're willing to reach out and work with the 2 of us as we can continue to try to develop ways to keep the community informed of what's going on. To that end, previously as the meeting started, or you started talking, Chair, you mentioned that the council comments at westjordan.utah.gov was a way for the community to stay in touch with the 7 council members. I want to confirm that yesterday evening, an individual used that and all 7 of you received that message instantaneously. I'm seeing Mr. Councilman Pack nod his head. So I'm glad to see that that's happening. If the community, I'm seeing Councilman Green not, he's doing this. So I'll check in with you after the meeting to verify if everyone, oh, one more over there. I know it was distributed to the staff members who made sure we will address those issues. So I just wanted to reiterate, council comments at westjordan.utah.gov. We'll continue to fine tune it. If the community members or citizens think there's a way we can do it better, please let us know. That is what we're interested in, is maintaining transparency. Anything from council members?
Councilmember Pack.
Thank you. So with regard to that email, just to ensure that we have good communication, we're not being redundant, but then we don't assume that someone else is going to reply. When it's not addressed to a specific council member, do we want to have our council director reply to that?
I've been checking in with the chair to verify what it is that he wants done in that instance. If the chair is busy because he's traveling or unavailable, we've gone to the vice chair. If it's directed to a particular region, I generally send it to that district, like the one you received last week. And then if it's generally something that the at-large members need to be aware of, I try to make sure they're aware of it as well. But if you're not getting the information, I need to know that. So the citizens that are watching this after the fact, if you're not hearing back from either myself, Alan, or a council member, please shoot us another question and we'll get right on it.
Well, thank you, because for instance, that one last night, I mentioned that I would study the issue and reply back. So I want to make sure I do that. But if a bunch of people are replying, I guess that's better than no one, but I want to make sure there's a cohesive, organized way of responding if it's going out to everyone. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yes, sir.
And I would just add to what Mr. Bricky said. If there's a question, go ahead and respond. Typically, I would recommend that if you do reply, just hit reply and not reply all, so that we can avoid potential communication in a non-public forum. But as things come across, if somebody's intending to reach all of the council, then by all means, all of the council would be welcome to respond. There's no prohibition on communication between council members and constituents. And frankly, since all 7 of us have an equal vote up here, whether it's your district or not, or at large or at not, all of us are voting. So if I were a resident, I'd want to hear from everybody. So you're more than welcome to do so.
Thank you, Chair.
Anything from Mr. Anderson?
No, I have nothing to report this evening. Thank you.
Okay. We'll go through city council comments and updates, and I'm just going to follow the order that everyone's showing up on the list tonight. We'll start with Councilmember Lamb.
I have nothing tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, Councilmember Pack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to mention and thank everyone for the great coordination as I'm driving around, obviously trying to stay home, but still trying to support our local businesses as we talked about in this meeting. It's nice to see the social distancing occurring. It's nice to see residents still striving to support local business in a smart way. I'm grateful to see our awesome city staff, public works, and other people out in the community working on projects. So it's a delicate balance of not letting this situation stop us from doing things that we otherwise could or should do, but also taking prudent precautions. So thank you for all the great communication via email and via Zoom meetings here and via text with the mayor's office and through city council, and for everybody's efforts, citizens, employees, elected officials. Grateful that we can all collaborate together, and it seems to be working pretty well, in my opinion. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Thank you. I would like to follow up on a couple of things. Is the mayor and Corbin still on? I can't see. Yes. Okay, thank you. So one item I'd like to follow up on is we talked about lights near tracks and itineraries, early college, high school. And I would like to at some point I know that we were studying where lights needed to be and all of that, but I would like to have that come back so we know where they're at with that. Then I want to thank Jared and staff for getting me that emergency plan. I hope that it gets updated soon. And with that, it's been suggested to me by community members, and I know in my neighborhood we do this, and perhaps we could do it citywide. Certainly for the pandemic, probably wouldn't be as useful, but for an earthquake, it certainly would if we sustain a fair amount of damage in our city. And it's a color-coded system. Each household or unit has colors like red, green, yellow. Red, you don't want to have to put on your door because that means someone's dead. Green means you're okay, and yellow means you need help. I think it might be something that our city should proactively look into and get in place before we have the next emergency. So if there's anything I can do to help with that, that would be great. I want to thank all the community workers that are considered necessary workers, because they are necessary, but my heart goes out to them, because every day, whether you're the nurse or the checker at the store or the restaurant person, you're grateful for your job, but you're also worried and your family is worried. So thank you to our community members that are considered essential and are still showing up basically on the front lines for us. I'm grateful for our community. I see lots of random acts of service, and I appreciate that, and encourage us to keep doing that and to be kind to one another. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitelock, and I will follow up on those. I know on those lights, we were discussing that right before all the exciting things happened. But I have had a couple of conversations with Brian, and I know it's in progress. I'll find out where it is, and I can get back to you on that. And your color code thing, that's exactly what it talks about in the CERT training that the city does provide. We just need to implement that in our cities for those circumstances. So I'll follow up on that as well. Thank you for those suggestions.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Whitelock and Mayor Burton. Next, we'll have Councilmember Green.
Good evening. I don't have very many comments tonight, but I do have a question for, and I'll just bring it up now because it may be the easiest time for the city attorney. Have we seen the results of that legal opinion that you were working on about the council being able to sign their own contracts, or a draft ordinance that one of the two that we could introduce to for in a future meeting?
Thank you, Council Member. I'm happy to address that. The answer is I have not completed a formal written legal opinion, but I have concluded that under state law, the City Council does have the authority to negotiate and hire its own legislative employees, and that would include signing any employment agreements that the council might believe to be appropriate. This morning, anticipating the request, I finished a draft ordinance change to the city code that I'm going to forward to you hopefully tomorrow. I'm having our personnel attorney review it now to make sure that I haven't missed something that's in the city personnel policies. And so I will be sending that to you. Just quickly, let me tell you the basis for my opinion. Under the concept of separation of powers, which comes into play most poignantly in this new form of government, the legislative and the executive bodies are two independent, sometimes referred to as co-equal branches of government. That coupled with language that currently exists in the Utah Code, which is not entirely clear, but clear enough that if you couple that language with current case law that does discuss the powers of cities, I've concluded that you do have the authority to sign employment agreements and do your own hiring as a legislative body. I have found that in looking at codes of several other cities and talking to their city attorneys, well, in one case where I could get a hold of him, that in some cities, they just allow it. Other cities, they have addressed it somewhat in their city codes, but not directly. And in one case, the same question came up recently, and they have addressed it in their city code. My opinion is, even without a city code amendment, you have that power. However, my recommendation is, so that there is no question, not necessarily now, because all of you are hearing this directly from me, as is and will the mayor, my recommendation is that for clarity, I'm recommending you adopt a code amendment similar to what I'm going to be sending you tomorrow to memorialize the authority that I believe exists under state law. It's always best as a legislative body to make it clear in your code what authority you do have or don't have, particularly if it's not entirely clear by looking at the state code itself. But again, my opinion is I'm pretty comfortable with it if you couple the state code language, which is somewhat vague, with current case law, you do have that authority. So that's the long answer to your short question.
Thank you. And I can't believe you think that Utah code is ambiguous or vague. I've never seen that ever in Utah code. So I'm surprised actually at that comment.
Only in a place or two.
Yeah. How many titles do we have? Never mind. There's at least that many. Other than that, so I look forward to seeing that so that we can get that on an agenda here shortly. Thank you for your help. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. And as long as I have all of your attention, when I do send it out, I really would like you to take a look at it because it needs to read. It's predominantly the process that you'll follow to do what I've described. And you all need to feel comfortable with the way it's laid out.
Cool. And once again, tell Jared we appreciate his help a lot.
All right. Anything else, Councilmember Green?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Worthen.
Said unmute myself, sorry. I want to reiterate a little bit of what Kayleen said, because those people are on my mind as well. You see a lot of posts about medical workers, our teachers, because now we're teaching our own children at home, our frontline workers, our first responders that are out there. You know, all my life, I was raised by two people that taught me to shake a hand, buy a meal, say thank you to those people. And that's not the first time you've heard this. If you've watched these meetings before, I've said that. I hope we don't forget that when this is over, because this will be over and we will get back to normal life. I hope we continue to remember how important these people are. And all of a sudden there are heroes. There are the people that, you know, we're all posting about and saying wonderful things about. And then we go back to normal life and they go back to doing exactly what they always do, being there for us, supporting us, and we don't recognize them like we should. So I'm hoping that this really changes people in remembering that, because all my life they have been way above and beyond your sports figures and your celebrities. Those are the real heroes, are the ones that we're highlighting now. I hope we continue to do that. I'm very honored to have several friends that are out on those front lines every day. I have a friend that's a sheriff out in Twilla. God love her. I've known her since I was 10 years old, and she's out there and she's taking care of the community. Rosie Rivera, I've known for a couple of years now, amazing woman, and she's out there supporting her people. I commend all of our officers and everybody else that's out there, and even our grocery store workers. I am planning my groceries every 2 weeks, so I don't have to go too often. I do not take my family. My husband and I used to go together, but nope, we send one person. So I really encourage people, take this very seriously. That's the only way we're going to get through this, and that's the only way we're going to get through this fast, is just follow the guidelines. Don't go camping, don't go on trips, don't visit people unless you have to. I mean, my mother's in a senior center. She called me the other day, needed some food. I went in, went out, and she met me outside. I even told her social distance, put it on her cart, and she went about her way. I didn't go into the complex, and that's hard, because, and we're all feeling it. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who is following this and keeping all of us safe. Keep those grocery workers safe, guys. Don't take your families. Keep the hospital workers safe. The less we're out there, the less of us that have to go to the hospital. So I just want to impress upon that. I want to thank those people. And I'm just going to take a personal moment here. And if I can make this show, this is a really hard time for all of us. But we can still do wonderful things in our family by keeping social distance. I got a little cell phone video right there, if you can see it. My son got engaged to his girlfriend of almost 5 years, not quite 5, but almost 5. And of course it was supposed to be a lot more public, but they social distance, they kept it, and it was just the two of them. So I'm saying wonderful things are still happening. Keep sharing those, and God bless you all.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you. I don't have a lot to say tonight. I do just want to say that I was very pleased to hear David Brickey mention that the staff has been very responsive. I am really, really glad to hear that. Cooperation and understanding is the only way we're going to get through this weird circumstance we find ourselves in as far as how we have to work together right now. So I'm glad to hear that that's going well. I understand that there's some bumps in the road because we're all trying to get used to a new circumstance and doing things a little differently. So glad to hear that that's going well. And that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
All right, and I don't have anything to add that hasn't already been stated. So with that, we'll proceed with the agenda. Next item is our consent portion. And I have been asked to pull both of these for discussion. So we will do them one by one. First up is the discussion and possible action about the interlocal agreement for the signal at U-111 and New Bingham Highway. Councilmember Whitelock. You're still muted.
How about now?
Can hear you now.
Okay. I just feel it would be good for staff to give the reason for the need for this light so that the public has record of why. Do we have any staff that can do that?
So looks like we do have some staff on the attendees list, and Scott Langford is raising his hand. So give it about 5 seconds to move him over to panelist or so. All right, so Scott, you're now a panelist. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me?
Sure enough.
Very good. There we go. That's a little more personal. Thank you, Councilmember Whitelock. The reason for this, and I don't know if I can share a screen or not.
Let me stop sharing and you'll be able to share.
Okay. Here we go. If I can find, I've got too many tabs open, it looks like. Okay, here we go. Hopefully you can see that.
Yes, the PDF.
Very good. All right. This isn't the best diagram. So this particular agreement is between us and the city of South Jordan, and it's needed because we share Old Bingham Highway is the border between West Jordan to South Jordan. The signal is needed to support the new Amazon facility that's under construction. With the amount of both employee and truck traffic coming in and out of this new driveway, essentially is what it is. There is a safety need for that traffic signal. And so because we share half of the road with South Jordan, we needed to get their permission, if you will, to put some of the traffic signal arms on the south side of Old Bingham Highway to facilitate this light. Does that answer your question or provide enough clarification?
Yes, thank you. For me, it looks like Zach has something.
I do have a follow-up question, if I may. On this, it's not actually at the intersection of New Bingham Highway and U-111, is that right? Because there is already a light there.
Correct.
This was a typo on the agenda. The agenda said New Bingham Highway, but the packet's clear in Old Bingham Highway. Sorry about that.
Old Bingham Highway, correct, Councilman Jacob.
I'm sorry, there's also a light at Old Bingham Highway and U-111.
Right. This is let me see if I can do this. Can you see the map now?
Yes.
All right. This should help.
Yes, maps. I always ask for maps on stuff like this, and occasionally I do get them.
Duly noted. So you're correct. So hopefully you can see the cursor. The blue line represents the border between West Jordan and South Jordan.
Right.
which again is Old Bingham Highway. You can see this little cutout right here. That is the location of this new signal going in.
Okay.
And
So it is not at U111.
Correct.
Which is right over there.
Right. Yeah, there's the existing intersection.
Right. That light was the subject of a lawsuit and some other things a couple of years ago. So that just wanted to be clear that we're not talking about the light at that intersection. This is a different light altogether.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions on this one for Mr. Langford? All right, is there motion that someone would like to make for this?
Sure, I'll move that we approve resolution 2021, authorizing the mayor to execute an interlocal agreement with South Jordan City for a traffic signal at the location Mr. Langford just showed us.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Whitelock, a second by Councilmember Jacob. Any discussion to the motion?
I'm just looking at the resolution, and I think it says approximately 70th West on Old Bingham Highway. I just want to clarify with Mr. Langford, is that accurate where it says 70th West on Old Bingham Highway?
Yes, it's 7040 West.
Okay. And it says approximately 7,000 West on Old Bingham Highway. So
yeah,
I just wanted to clarify that the spot that Scott showed us, I think is accurate in the resolution.
Yeah.
Okay. See no further comments. Let's vote.
Thank you. Councilmember Green,
Yes.
Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Council Chair McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Worthen,
Yes.
Councilmember Pack,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, the second consent item for discussion is Resolution 20-22, which is the renewal and continuance of the declaration of local emergency. Councilmember Whitelock.
On this one, I just wondered if the mayor wanted to give any further information on what his plan is.
Basically, what happens is when the emergency declaration was made, the authority permits me to do that for 30 days. And the 30 days is coming. And as you are probably aware, the circumstances in the city of West Jordan have not gone away. We still have the same conditions or some worse conditions than when we declared the emergency. So in order for this to continue, it needs to go to the council, and the council has to authorize the emergency to continue. So this is an opportunity for the council to keep this going, just to keep the mayor in check so that I don't do things without the council knowing about it.
Did we authorize to start this? I don't remember doing a vote to start this.
You do not need I don't need the council's authorization to start it, just if I keep it going longer than 30 days.
And it's for another 30 days, correct?
It is not. I
No.
left it open.
What is it for?
So there is not an end date to it. So I could have done 30 days. I could have done 90 days. We could have done whichever it was. Now that the council is involved in helping make this declaration, we can create it however we want. So the way this is worded, it will be continuing. And I chose to do that because we don't know when this will end, or if it'll end all at once. It won't. It'll be gradual, I'm sure. So with it open-ended, then we can choose when to end it when we feel that we are sufficiently healed enough to go forward. If for some reason the council thinks I'm dragging this on longer than I should, there's also provision in this that the council could choose to end it if I chose not to. So it could be done either by the council or by the mayor when we choose it's time to end.
Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you. Question on section 2 on that. The city council consents to the mayor renewing and continuing other declarations or executive orders authorized as a result of the declaration being in place. I'm just wondering what an example, what those are. It seems like a carte blanche for go ahead, do anything you want. You don't need us. And as long as you can label it with a COVID label. And I'm not distrustful of our mayor. I'm distrustful of setting a precedent. And so I just want to dig into that a little bit. What are the potential other declarations or executive orders authorized as a result of this declaration?
I'm going to refer that to Rob, but I will say first that's past tense. So those are others that have already happened, not those that will happen. But Mr. Wall, do you want to clarify that?
Yes, I can. There's two different concepts that arise in the context of an emergency. The declaration of the emergency is the act that invokes the ability of the city to, number one, exercise certain powers that otherwise could not exercise except in the event of emergency. And second, it invokes and documents the city's eligibility for assistance from the county, the state, and from FEMA. Under a declaration, there can be additional orders. There can be orders given by the executive, or there can be declarations. An example of a declaration is where the governor, rather than imposing a shelter-in-place order, has, by declaration, encouraged residents to do so, whereas the county has issued a binding order. That's an example.
Thank you.
Well, and I think this is Kelvin. I think the mayor's already done a couple of those with the soft closure of City Hall and the telework agreements. So I think those would just be consistent with the emergency.
And
Right.
thank you, Council Member. And if I could comment, Mr. Chair, again on Council Member Green's comment, the mayor is, those are good examples. And there's another one that's going to be coming soon, which implements the regulations that have been promulgated by the Department of Labor with regard to sick leave and Family Medical Leave Act leave that employees are entitled to. That has to be in place by April 17th. And he and Human Resource Director and the city manager and Mr. Quayle, who is our personnel attorney, have been spending innumerable hours putting that together so that the city's in compliance with the orders that have been issued by the Department of Labor. So that's another executive order that will be coming from the mayor.
Okay, so not that I want to belabor this, but back to my question then, Mayor mentioned that this is those already authorized and only allowing the continuation of those. This is sounding like now there's a new order. So I don't want to belabor the point too much because I think it's a technicality, but that would seem to indicate that new orders then are possible and authorized.
You're right. Section 1 is the existing one. Section 2 are new ones. So
okay, section 2 that I was reading from.
Oh, I apologize. So yeah, section 2 is new. So as long as we have that declaration of emergency, I have the authority to do other declarations such as what is described, or others we may not even know about right now that we may want to do.
Okay.
But I assure you, I'll let you know what they are too.
I can't tell you how comforted I am.
You look comfortable. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments about this item? If not, I'd look to the council for a motion.
I'll do it. I move the council approve resolution number 20-22, resolution consenting to the renewal and continuance of the declaration of the local emergency issued by the mayor on March 16, 2020.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilmember Green, second by Councilmember Worthen. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, let's vote.
Thank you, Councilmember Whitelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Jacob,
Yes.
Councilmember Green,
Yes.
Councilmember Pack,
Yes.
Councilmember Lamb,
Yes.
Council Chair McConaughey,
Aye.
Councilmember Worthen.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, moving on from consent, our next item is business item 8A, which is presentation on Acreage Park Phase 5 at about 8200 South and 6700 West. Before we jump into this one, I want to express appreciation to the public for their patience with us. This is going to be coming as a public hearing on April 15th. And as we were putting the agendas together, we weren't sure how things were going to work with citizen comment and being able to get feedback from the residents about the public hearings. The concern was before we had the citizen comment portion figured out, what happens if we have a public hearing and people are only able to participate by phone or they're not able to see the presentation? What happens if it's not real time? How can we make sure that we're as transparent and offer as much opportunity to engage with the public as possible? What we decided on as a temporary solution at the time was that we would hold this particular public hearing twice. Today would just be as a business item, so everybody can hear the presentation, have some time to think about it, provide feedback to the city council, and either speak up, and speak later, or send us emails, thoughts, whatever you may want to have us hear about that. Then on the 15th, we'll have the public hearing where we take action. So for tonight's item, even though it's listed as a business item, you'll notice it does not say discussion and possible action. This is just the presentation. So the council will be hearing the presentation, we'll be asking questions, but we're going to be withholding opinions and real full robust debate and discussion until our subsequent meeting when we'll have the public hearing. Since we were able to figure out how to get the citizen comments portion to work, as you saw earlier, that's how we're going to be proceeding going forward. So it'll still be in the regular meeting. We'll have the public hearing, then we'll have able to hear from the public comments, and then we'll proceed as normal. But for this one, because we were sort of in a transitional phase going from in-person to virtual meetings, that's why this one is a little non-standard. So given that explanation, we'll go ahead and jump into this one. I guess the question is, who is going to be presenting this to us first? And I guess, Mayor, I'd look to you or Corbin to hear on that one. Or I see a raised hand, looks like Scott Langford, so I will put him up back as panelist again. Okay, Scott, you're on your way over. All right.
So Chair McConaughey, if there should be a Skylar Tolbert from Ivory Homes.
There we go. I'll promote. Yep. There we go.
So he's prepared to present.
Okay. All right, Skylar, you should be in the meeting as a panelist now.
Yeah, can you hear me and see me okay?
Yep. Let me stop sharing. There you go.
Sure. I don't know if staff prepared anything for this. I thought they might have, but if not, I've got just a PDF that I can share that has the map. I will just share that real quickly and be brief in my comments tonight. Can you see that okay? Perfect. So this is roughly a 10-acre parcel, which is adjacent to our current subdivision called Acreage Park. Acreage Park was master planned for 144 units 4 to 5 years ago. And at that time, it was purchased from the school district. The school district held out this corner parcel with the intention to eventually one day build a school. They have since come to us in the last year and have asked if we had any acreage that we could trade for this so that we could build more lots here and they could have a school where they needed it in a location that they called more necessary. So as a lot of you heard tonight earlier, there's a presentation on the Jones property. They have interest in moving this school site from where it currently sits, which is on the corner of 8200 South and 6700 West, and moving it a little bit south and west. They want to have a school site to the west. So that's how this property came up. The plan that's in front of you matches the current zoning that is already in place on our subdivision that we've built. We've done 4 phases and we're about out of lots. On average, these lots happen to be, even though it will be rezoned as the same zone, these lots happen to be roughly on average 900 square feet larger than our previous phases that we have built. We're excited about this. Again, we weren't, this wasn't part of the original, but now that the school has asked to move locations, we wanted to be a good neighbor and do that with them. So I am happy to answer any questions. I know that we will have a public hearing next meeting and I can answer citizen comments as well. But if staff and or any council members have questions, I can answer them now.
I guess I'd ask if, Mr. Langford, is there anything that you would add to this one?
Skylar did a great summary. I'm also available for questions. I think Kent Page, senior planner, is also waiting the wings if there are specific questions.
I have questions.
Okay, Councilmember Jacob.
Thank you. Just a couple of clarifying questions on the concept plan. If I could, the remainder parcel A that kind of strikes through the center of that, is that a planned pathway, dog walking, sidewalk, something like that?
That's actually to accommodate the ditch. As you go to the west, we have an open ditch that runs through our other phases. So it will be piped until it hits that area and then it will open back up again.
Okay, so no trail or anything alongside, just natural grasses as they call it.
Correct. We have had very brief conversations with staff to put a trail through there, and we'd love to accommodate that if we can to get residents using the trail off 8200 South. So right now that trail comes along 8200 South. The thought is to bring them into our subdivision on a road that you can't see, but there's a road that comes off 82 where my cursor is, and the trail would come up here, come through here, and either go through parcel A or they'd be able to use the sidewalks. As you come to the north a little bit, there's a trail that crosses the road here on 67 right, and goes into Peterson. So it has been talked about. However, parcel A will for sure be the to accommodate the open ditch.
Okay, awesome. And then on the proposed change map, I guess I could say, if we could, I don't know if you're looking at the same PDF I am, but it's about 3 slides back of this one.
I'm not. This was
pages on the
actually my old
PDF.
plan set that I brought up, that I pulled up.
Okay, it shows the medium density residential square, but also has a strip of parks and open land between this square and 82nd, which I don't see on any of the plans. I'm just wondering if that's part of the proposal to have a parks and open land strip there.
That was actually when the school district had this, that was improved and already dedicated. So there's already sidewalk there, and so it does accommodate that. With that said,
there is not sidewalk.
Even though
there's not sidewalk there.
There's not.
There is not.
Okay.
I was there on Sunday.
I believe it's already dedicated. If not, we can accommodate that. But my understanding is that was already, maybe Scott and or Ken could answer that.
Do you see what I'm looking at, Scott? It's in the staff report PDF. It's page 8. This has the page number at the bottom of the screen. Yeah, page 8.
Could I share my screen so that I know that we're talking about the same?
I will stop sharing mine.
Yep. That's the one.
Oh, sorry. I should unmute myself.
The concept plan and the utility plan and everything seems to show that this development will go right up to the street, you know, possibly with a sidewalk, but just wonder what that is about.
So, Councilman, are you asking about this strip right here?
Yes, exactly that.
Okay. We plan to handle it like we did this other section right here. Essentially, we went and we transitioned the sidewalk. We converted that to a trail, so it's going to be a wider sidewalk, an 8-footer, right. And that will continue along through here. As Skylar indicated, there is the opportunity to pull it in and come this direction.
I think as the applicant, we're open either way. I don't know that we have a preference, but that was a comment from staff that might be a good thing to get the residents off of 8200 and going through neighborhoods on a trail as opposed to staying on there. We're open either direction.
Correct.
Okay.
And you can see with this aerial where the drainage came down through here before, that's accommodated. That water now flows down, will flow down through this section and then cross over as you saw in the concept. And that's where you could pull people off of the road here, bring them up here into a trail and up to this road.
Okay, thanks. I just wanted to make sure what we were talking about on the zoning application. I just wanted to make sure that I was clear that it does not include that parks and open land strip rezoning to R18E, but that is staying in the parks and open land category. So I wanted mostly to make sure about that.
All right.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Next up with a question was David Pack.
Yes, thank you, Chair. With what Council Member Jacob mentioned, I know he and I, not to speak for him or Council Member Green, I know when we were on Planning Commission, we felt the same way. I assume it's the same. Just anything that we can do to mitigate or control the native grass areas and or non-sidewalk areas would be great. I know that there are areas in our city where people will start walking on a sidewalk and then it just abruptly ends. Or the native grass gets out of control and becomes a hazard with insects, rodents, fire, allergies, aesthetics. So sidewalks and native grass. Yes, please. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitelock.
Thank you. My question is, if we're going to divert traffic, this is what I've heard. I've heard that people can either walk this way or we might divert them through the subdivision, but the area we say we're going to divert them to is an open canal. How is that going to work? How do you envision that?
It's just been a very brief topic so far, and we said we're open to accommodate it. It could be also that they use the sidewalk throughout our community and they don't go through that area that has the ditch in it. So the conversation hasn't developed far enough to know. We just basically said, if you want to pull them off 8200, we're happy to accommodate and work with staff on that.
And who takes care of open ditches in our city like that? Is this an HOA and so they take care of it, or?
In our, yeah, the HOA takes care of the basically the ground cover that's there.
Thank you.
May I mention on the screen that you can see right now, just directly to the north is our detention area. In the bottom, the way that it was approved at the time was native vegetation, right where the cursor is. The HOA, I should say the residents of the community really disliked it. And so that's been transitioned into sod, so it's not unsightly. I think it was originally planned for native to cut back on water usage, but the HOA really wanted to be able to use that space and things like that. So based on the previous comment, that is sod, and just thought I'd mention it. And that area, if you look at the concept parcel B on the actual plan, extends that, and that area becomes larger, and we're going to add a top lot to that at the same time.
Is that the one up? Okay, it is. It's the one up in the corner. So that lays in there. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the council? All right. Thank you very much, Skylar. And I'll take the screen back then. There we go. Our next item is new business. Whoops, this should say new business item. Sorry about that. This is to give the council a quick heads up as to items that are going to be coming on a future agenda. Councilmember Green, would you like to chime in on these? You're on mute, or should I take that as a no?
No, I clicked the wrong button. Oh my heck. You got to be smarter than the mouse. The first one is an introduction to we're introducing a change to City Code 61B11. That one is the one that the only way we can't have let me rephrase that. The current city code is very ambiguous on whether or not, if we have an electronic meeting, if we have to have a quorum at at City Hall. 61B11 implies that we do, because we can only not have a quorum at City Hall if the mayor declares emergency. So it's kind of like this inverse logic that is kind of vague. But to clear it up, we're proposing that we strike that particular section and then just use the council rules to have and the rest of the city ordinance. The second one is, and we're just giving everybody a chance to look at it and review it. The other one is the introduction of committee assignments. If you remember a few meetings ago when we passed the council rules, we also established 7 standing committees. The attachment to the item is a grid that we can all start filling in and deciding what committees we want to be on. And then hopefully next week, we can look at the grids or look at everybody's wishes and make some appropriate committee assignments. And then the thought process is that we start to work on things with the committees, then it might save us some time in the future in council meetings because we're doing some of the heavy lifting in a committee. So that's just the heads up for those two. They should be on the agenda next week. but that'll give a chance everybody to look at it. And we're trying to do this with many of our items so that we have a chance to look at them. Obviously, next week is a 1 week meeting from tonight, but hopefully in the future, as we get these on the agenda, people will have 2 to 4 weeks to look at them before they're actually being discussed.
All right, any questions? Councilmember Jacob.
I actually just want to say thank you for your work on this. I really, really like the concept of having a sneak previews like this. Really, really great idea. And these 2 items, bringing them forth so that we can start taking action on these. These are great. I just want to say thanks.
And I'll echo what Councilmember Jacob said, where Councilmember Green has been requesting, trying to get packets 2 weeks in advance, and follows it up by doing it himself. So the information's out there ready to review well in advance to give plenty of time, so no surprises. So thank you. All right, if there's no more questions about that, next item we have is remarks. Does anybody have any closing remarks before we move to adjourn the meeting?
Just a couple. This is Kelvin. If you'll notice on the agenda, and we're gonna try to start doing this, is a calendar. Hopefully we can get it out, and then we can get a 3-month calendar out according to the rules. But you'll notice that there are the upcoming events that we have scheduled, and that's just something that we're trying to do to make sure that everybody is on top of things. And then you'll also notice there's an unfinished business section that just helps us keep track of what we've missed and where we're at with these, so that we know what we need to do to finish the few hanging, I was going to say hanging chads, but Chad's not hanging out there, but the hanging items are. So as Chad waves. So just you've seen a couple of changes in the agenda that's consistent with some of the rule changes we passed, and hopefully they're useful to help us as we make things better and more transparent. And that's all I have.
Any other Councilmember Jacob?
Gotta unmute. Just one unfinished business item that's not on there, or that we'd like regular updates on, would probably be the theater community center project. I'd like to have that on there. I know it's not really in the council's purview, but I'd just like to have council updates on it when we can. So I don't know if that's an appropriate place to add it, but I think that'd be cool.
Mr. Lee, did you want to speak to that one?
I just want to say I'm happy to do it. As often as you want to schedule it, I'll provide an update.
I'm wondering if just adding it to the mayor's report or CAO's report might suffice.
I'll plan on that for next week.
Yeah, just basically when there's updates to be had, right? Obviously is when we need updates, but yeah, even as far as, we're gonna plan on breaking ground in June, whatever, okay. Something like that. So
good, very good. Yeah.
I don't know if we are arts people. Don't email me. I don't know if we're breaking ground in June. That was hypothetical.
Councilmember Pack had a remark as well.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to say thanks for all the coordination that goes into this. I know that this has thrown us for a loop trying to get organized, and you'd think that a Zoom meeting would be really easy to coordinate, but with all of the red tape that we need to follow and that we should follow, I just want to thank Chairman McConaughey and Vice Chair Green and our council advisors, David Brickey and Alan Anderson. I know there's a lot of time and effort that goes into planning this. We knew that there would be more time involved at the beginning of the year with the change of the form in government, but I don't know if we necessarily appreciated how much time would be going into it. And so thanks for going the extra mile in planning and coordinating these meetings.
Any other remarks this evening? All right, last item would be a motion to adjourn. So I would welcome that from any who would like to make it.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
About to die for lack of a second on that one. I was a little worried. So motion by Councilmember Jacob, second by Councilmember Green. All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, we will stand adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, we're out.